His death has been hard to watch and difficult to accept. It has presented a profound lesson on what it means to consciously create the experience others have of you. Dad held on to the perspective that his cancer was something he could beat right up until his last couple of weeks of life. Those around him could see that he was dying, but no matter how they tried to share their perspective with him, he seemed to reject it. About a month before he passed, he asked me for my perspective, and I assumed he wanted the truth. I told him that I thought he was at the pointy end, meaning that he didn't have long, but also wasn't sure how long he could hang on. He gave me a confirmatory nod, as if to say, I knew you didn't believe in me, then said, thanks for being honest. In hindsight, I know Dad was asking for some hope, a reason to keep fighting when he felt he didn't have any fight left in him. But, as harsh as it sounds, I wanted him to face the truth. I wanted him to take my honesty and use it to fuel the courage he needed to accept his fate. At that moment, I wanted him to experience the power of seeing his predicament from a perspective other than his own. I wanted him to have true perspective. There is nothing more certain about life than the moment we no longer wield it. A moment so certain it can conjure up great uncertainty. Death is known to us all as much as it is unknown. Only in your final breath will you fully appreciate what it means to die and what it means to have lived. Death signifies change as much as change signifies death, and they are the only certainties we have, but they will always remain unknown beyond their labels. To embrace the certainty and uncertainty of both death and change simultaneously requires a broadened perspective. True perspective incorporates the paradox that the end signifies the beginning as much as letting go of something old allows you to grasp hold of something new. True perspective is about acceptance of what is that precedes adaptation towards full expression of authenticity. Authenticity, in my opinion, is the highest form of intelligence. We are drawn to those who can achieve full expression in their chosen field, from business leaders to athletes, musicians, sculptors, entrepreneurs, inventors, painters, poets, writers, and actors. Their uniqueness is undeniable, and their genius fills us with curiosity and awe. They enable us to connect with their expression by allowing us to experience all of who they are, even the parts we may not like. Oftentimes, we choose to live vicariously through our authentic idols, seeing them as the unattainable other. Similarly, many of us spend our lives imitating them, creating versions of ourselves that live up to the expectations others have of us and those we have of ourselves. However, in our last moments, the truth about what is most important to us will be revealed. This true perspective is an unwavering clarity, a dazzling simplicity, an undeniable knowing, and the reconciliation we have been seeking all our lives. In our final moments, we can no longer lie to ourselves and avoid the truth of it all. We must simply bask in our own authenticity. The one thing we all share is the inevitability of facing death, be it our own death, that of a family member or friend, or even somebody we don't know personally, but know of. Death and the change that it brings is an inevitable part of all our lives. It is the great equalizer for us all, a bridge builder for relationships, an attention grabber, and the bringer of true perspective. In what was to be my last conversation with Dad, he shared that he'd often wondered what his last breath would be like. He didn't elaborate any more than that, but I understood his curiosity. His exploration then made me wonder, what happens in that moment between your second last breath and your last? You see, I think that second to last breath is when time stands still and we start flicking through the highlight reel of our lives. We know we only have that one last breath to go before we die, so it's the most focused we will ever be. It's in this second to last breath that we get to reflect on our lives and on the love that we have for others and truly experience what is most important to us in that moment. We put everything in perspective. Only that which matters takes our energy. Not even time has meaning. We simply experience the truth of the moment. This is true perspective. That second to last breath is our opportunity to relax, to let go one last time and breathe our final sigh of relief, signifying a life lived, expired, and spent. At least, that's what I'd hope for. A final letting go, resignation, followed by peace. I'm aware that this may sound to some like a very morbid view, which is heavily biased toward the end of one's life. If this is you, then I challenge you to consider how you can fully embrace life and all it has to offer. If you've never considered the prospect of death or change, if we imprison ourselves by limiting our perspective to what we know, we compromise, stagnate, and stifle our growth. True perspective is about seeking to unearth the unknown. That which you don't know, you don't know. This requires gathering perspectives beyond your awareness that can only come from external sources. Interesting. So, clearly, you can tell that this was written when I was feeling quite raw and exposed over the loss of my father and his death. And it had a significant impact on me, very significant impact in so many ways. And it was really raw at this time. And it's interesting, I'm sort of reflecting now on writing this book, and I never anticipated including the death of my father in this book, but because I was writing it at the time that I was conversing with him on a daily basis, and he was sharing all of this stuff that was so relevant to what I was doing and working on in myself, but also in my work and in this book, that it just made sense to incorporate that experience. So yeah, I'd actually forgotten that I'd written that prologue, and it still resonates very deeply with me, having read it now. The concept of true perspective and the concept of new beginnings and ending all being one and the same, and part of that constant evolution. In order to create something new, we need to let go of something old, and that process really. And the idea that self-awareness can only come from external sources, I still strongly hold on to that. Our minds have a beautiful, beautiful ability to make meaning and connection and story. That's why storytelling is so powerful, and it's so important in what we do in every aspect of our lives. But it's also extremely misleading. And this point of true perspective is, get out of your own bloody way, right? Your brain is deceiving you, and it always will. And just accept it. Just accept that your brain is talking shit to yourself, and the opportunity to seek perspective external to what you know and believe is super important. to humble you, to tame you, but to also lift you and enlighten you. I think these are really, really important elements to self-awareness, not just being able to manage emotion and respond effectively in a difficult conversation or a conflict. This is much deeper than that. How are you being experienced? What is the experience other people are having of you? And that experience, be it, piecemeal in terms of the individuals that you're interacting with, when it's combined and you have a view of all of those pieces of insight, and there's a theme that surrounds them. I've sought feedback from 10 people, and across the 10 people there was a theme in particular in relation to me that I can utilize to help me further develop. That is what I'm talking about in terms of true perspective. And the idea that we stumble our way through life blind, deaf and dumb to the truth is so obviously clear to me, and I'm sure everyone else. It's not a new insight. However, that second to last breath, that moment before we let go, we see with absolute clarity what is actually going on. And there were many moments that I experienced with my father where, I could see in him those moments of clarity and authenticity. And it wasn't always pretty. It wasn't always a sense of awe and amazement. There was definitely some massive anticlimax moments where he recognized the truth. Like that time he was asking me for my feedback or my perspective on how long he had to live, basically. He wanted to hear what I had to say. So, that paradox of I want the truth, and then me sharing the truth, or anyone sharing the truth, and then that age-old you can't handle the truth. It's absolutely true. He didn't want to hear that somebody that he trusted in his world, that he'd been confiding in about his illness, had gotten the better of him. And, my honest belief was I didn't know how long he had, and he was getting to the pointy end. He was frail. Physically, he just wasn't well. He looked sick. Mentally, he'd sort of given up, and it was the pointy end. We all knew it was coming. He knew it was coming, and yet he hadn't accepted it, and he needed to hear from somebody, hey, it's happening. You're going to die. Like, what are you going to do with the time that you've got left, and how do you want us to experience you right now? And unfortunately, that didn't happen for him right up until that last moment. And even then, it wasn't a pleasant one for him. So anyway, why is this all important? Well, I don't know, actually. It was a sharing of the work that I do with my clients. I'm deeply committed to helping people see themselves. And of course, the issue that we all face is we can't see ourselves because we're biased. We're so biased. We might be negatively biased toward ourselves, and many people fall into that bucket or that category. We might be positively biased toward ourselves, and that is a good thing some of the time. And I think if most people were positively biased, they'd probably achieve a lot more and feel a lot better about themselves and their life. However, that's just not the way the world works. We tend to underrate our ability, down tread ourselves and criticize ourselves. And that has a net negative impact on how we show up and who we are as people. So yeah, that's my monologue on the prologue, and my thoughts on it now. Has my perspective changed on what true perspective is and how that can benefit people? No, actually. I think true perspective is an incredibly powerful thing. What do I mean by true perspective? It's a combination of objective feedback sourced from multiple areas, and that being key stakeholders in your world. In a work context, that is a 360. It is asking for multiple opinions from people that follows a structured process to give you insight, and the process in and of itself leads to insight. What you do with that is completely up to you, and that's pretty much what I talk about in my book. And I go through that process myself, and I share that experience in the book. So there you go. Very long-winded summary and monologue of my prologue. But hope that was interesting for anyone who listened in. And for those of you that did persevere and hang out to the end, congratulations. Let's hope it wasn't a complete waste of your time.